once belonged to the Black Family Genealogy and History Society in Phoenix, Arizona.
Right.
And I belonged to that group for probably a good 10 to 11 years.
Right.
Two African American women, Joyce McCullum and now the late Vicki Mitchell, they were the ones who sat me down at the computer, got on Ancestry.com with me and said, genealogy starts with you back. You don't look up genealogy coming from somebody in 18 whatever down. It starts with you.
You back.
So you put your name in, right? That is the key to starting any type of genealogical research.
Right.
That you really want to bring up.
Right.
Documentation of what you are finding or searching for. Mm-hmm. And so I put in my name, I put in my mother and father's name because I know the names.
Right.
And if I didn't even know the names, it would click me to them. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
But that's what I'm saying. It starts with you as the person, the main person, and it travels back. And as it finds your mother and father, they find their mother and father, then all of a sudden it's another generation. You understand what I mean?
Right, right.
Now, most Black people in this country have been told the untruth that you can't go beyond backwards beyond 1870 because the majority of Black people were enslaved.
Right.
I call it an untruth because it depends on where your people were enslaved.
Right.
What type of records are really out there?
Right.
Okay. Personal letters, personal diaries, personal journals. It's true when you start to look for enslaved peoples, they did not list Black people in, like you would say, a regular list of family settings. No, they listed them as property.
Right.
And in many instances, they did not have their names. If you're looking even for a name, you'll never find a last name because those enslaved were not given last names.
Right.
Okay, while enslaved. And the mistaken thing, we think that those who came out of slavery took the last name of their master. No, they did not.
Gia, what's going on? It's your boy, Quan John, here reading Motivational Motives. It's a bona fide manuscript. It's a book of real life parables, quintessential quotes, and reasons to reflect. It can be purchased in Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Nobles, and over 40,000 international mom and pop shops. So get your copy, 100.
We're finding that out through genealogy, that a great number of them refused to take the master's last name and took somebody else's last name.
Really?
So that is something that we don't even look at it that way anymore. Okay.
Wow.
Not unless you were so deliberately, how could I say it, controlled by the white that is owning you.
Right.
Then you might really be found in wills and other documents.
Right.
You find our people because they were willed to other families. Okay. Right. As enslaved. So that's where you might get a hold of the first name. If in the journals and in the property records, sometimes they'll say a slave was born 18 blah 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 or 17 blah blah blah. Sometimes they will put a date of birth and they'll just say male child.
Wow.
Wow.
Male slave born, blank blank, and that's it. So you always have to sort of like have an idea of what period of time you're dealing with for sure, and how these names play or what comes into play. Every once in a while, you do get a record that does tell the name of the enslaved person and the age. but that depends on that particular slave master and how he wanted to keep his books.
Right.
I think they always utilize Thomas Jefferson's property books to sort of be an example as to how his 300 slaves were listed. And that's the reason why there was somewhat of a mix-up concerning Sally Hemings as to who she really was.
Right.
Was she really related to Jefferson's wife? Yes, she was. She was actually the half sister to Jefferson's wife, Sally Hemings.
And he had children by her too, right?
He had five children by her. And when he died, he did not give her freedom. It was not stated in his will that Sally would be freed. So it's going to be her two sons, two of her big boys, eldest sons are going to be the ones who will eventually buy her freedom.
Wow.
Now, you wrote this amazing book that I actually read named Eagle Eye.
Yes.
And I was telling Portia about it, and she asked me what was it about. And I'll be honest with you, it was so much information. I couldn't give her a concise idea of what it was about. What I got from it, it was very interesting because it I'm just gonna give a little brief synopsis. It took a guy that came from Georgia and he moved to New York, and he was introduced to his Indian heritage as a darker complected man. That's just briefly.
That's right.
What I got out of it. So I want you please just to give us what, why did you guys write the book? What was the developmental process? And speak about Robert Banks. And I do have a question about the name, because he took on the name Banks. And I want you within your answer to tell us why. And what you
actually,
please.
He had always carried the name of Cornelius as his last name.
Right.
And it's not until we actually start to do the book and deal with the genealogy that he's going to find out that he's really a Banks.
Right.
He's only a Cornelius because of the fact that his grandmother, who had been married to John Banks, and John Banks died prematurely by being killed, murdered.
Right.
She marries Zach Cornelius.
Right.
So Zach Cornelius is going to raise the children that she had from John Banks.
Thank you.
And it's Robert Cornelius's father, Robert Cornelius, who changes his name himself to being Cornelius. He knew all the time he was a Banks.
Right.
But because he too got into some trouble as a grown man in Twigs and had to leave real quick and run to Atlanta.
Right.
So when his children were born, he thinks he's smart. He tells his children, each one from Robert on down, you're Cornelius, you're Cornelius, we're Cornelius.
Right.
But in the meantime, myself and one of his first cousins looked them up.
Right.
And on the IRS forms, they're all named Banks. Do you get me?
Got you.
And I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm getting this now. I see exactly what your father did. He took on his stepfather's last name.
That's what he did.
Did not change it legally.
Right.
Kids are born. He's throwing his name at you. He's literally cutting you out from knowledge of who you really are.
Right. Got you. Thank you for clearing that up for me, because when I read that in the book, I'm like, what happened? So please tell us about who Robert Banks is and the development of this book and the objective behind it, please.
Robert Banks, like you said, was born in Atlanta.
Right.
Fulton County, in 1940.
Right.
December 16, 1940. He is raised in Atlanta.
Okay.
And he goes through a lot in his young life, as you probably had seen.
Yes.
It's not just the moving up and down. It was his education that was seriously impacted. And especially at the age of 5, when a teacher at the David Street School decided she didn't like this little joker up in her class who was outdoing her daughter. Okay.
Mm.
And she went and checked to see where Robert was coming from, and that they had been living in the projects. And so she said to the school authorities, he's not supposed to be here. He should be going to school near where he lives.
Mm.
And that's where the ball gets rolling very seriously for him. He actually is told, you know, here, take this note, tell your parents they got to register you in a school that's close to you. Well, the project school was nothing. They weren't learning anything. He said the kids were as bad as hell.
Right.
And that's when all of this whole idea of learning went from his mind, and he goes into escapism, meaning art, because he always could draw.
Right.
And he liked to draw. So he wasn't doing homework. He wasn't doing anything.
Right.
And this follows him all the way up into high school. Okay, where he goes to Booker T. Washington High School. And in high school, again, he's come to the point whereby psychologically, he does not want to deal with all of this craziness that he has to observe and see. And he told me, you know, that there was so much going on, not just in his house,
right,
but in the whole neighborhood.
Right.
He becomes known as a fantastic fighter, and even though he is nobody that's buff.
Right. I read that. Right.
He's beating up kids left and right, forward and center. And he pretty much is allowed to do everything he wants to do. His parents does not check him, okay? It's only when he goes to live with his grandmother for that short while, and she's into the religious factor, and that's in another part of Atlanta, Summerhill. It's when he goes there, okay, he begins to realize, well, there is something different. And that's when his grandmother keeps telling him, you are different. We are Native Americans. We're not Africans.
Right.
We don't have anything to do with Africa. We are Native peoples. And he keeps saying to her, don't you see how black I am? There's no way I'm a Native American. And she keeps telling him, no. There are Native Americans that look like us. And he's like, oh, come on, Grandma, this, you know, please, you just trying to be something that, you know, we're not. That's about it.
Right.
It's when he comes to New York at the age of 16, he starts to learn a lot about life.
Right.
Okay. Now he's no longer in the, as we would call, the support and bosom of his family in Georgia.
Right.
He has an aunt that he lives with here in Harlem for a short while. He gets kicked out. He has to go find his own little kitchenette kind of, you know, studio. And he actually seek a way of gaining a better education now that he's in the North and stuff like that. He's a very interesting personality simply because of the fact of his own inner beliefs, okay, that nobody can teach him anything. He already knows it, okay? Right. And it kind of like shocks me all the time because I'm like, hold on, there's a lot that you can learn. But he is one of those people that learns through experience.
Got you.
You have people like that in this
That's
world.
Right. Absolutely.
Everything is experience, okay? No matter how much book knowledge, and he's very good in math. He's excellent in math. For somebody that was not totally trained, you understand what I mean? He's excellent in math, and that's the reason why he becomes that carpenter, okay? Right. He can build a house if he needs to. He knows masonry because he was taught that in the technical school in Atlanta at the age of around about 15, because that's when they realized he needed to go to technical college because he's highly skilled with his hands. And that is, his hands speak it when you see him. So that's the knowledge. But when he comes to New York and he really matures, that's how he eventually meets these Native Americans that looks like him.
Like him.
And these are people that are coming from the Ukachug tribe and the Shinnecock tribe, the Mathinacock tribe, the Montauk tribe. These are all the tribes on Long Island.
Right.
again, that you are never taught about in your history.
At all.
Okay. And these are not people who are pretending to be natives. These are native peoples.
Right.
The Okachugs, they are actually, so they have state support. Okay, state support and recognition. Oh, yes, they do. Okay, and you've seen the look of them in the book, right? LAQUON, you saw them.
Yes.
Yeah, they're photos of the people. Okay. When I go with him to Long Island and we go to the Shinnecock, I'm constantly asked if I'm Shinnecock.
Really?
Because I do look like one of their women who is an educated, highly educated woman. And I think she might be a little younger than me.
Okay.
And I believe she might be a lawyer or something like that.
Okay.
But I have seen her face. And I thought, that's uncanny. She does look like me. And every time I go in that area, they always ask me, are you Mrs. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. You're the Shinnecock? No, I'm not.
Right.
Okay. You know, so it's a case of when you see the Narragansett, when you see the Narragansett of Rhode Island, the Pequot of Connecticut, the Wampanoag of Massachusetts, when you see them, they look like us.
Really?
They look like us.
Wow.
It's wild. These people are recognized tribes by the government. And you're saying to yourself, so if they look like that, so hold on, what happened here?
Right.
You know, they practice their native traditions. They eat their native foods. They dress within their native attire for whatever events. They own their reservations. They own the land of their reservations. Okay. The Shinnecock are out there in Southampton.
Really?
Long Island. Yeah. The white people took over their land a long time ago, especially around 1910, when they went into court to argue that these whites were infringing upon their land. Okay. And you know what that judge told them?
What?
You people are no longer native. And he said, what? He said, no, because there are many of you that look white and there are many of you that look Puerto Rican. You get mixed with all these other peoples, so you done lost your native factor. Because this judge knew that the true Shinnecock were black people, looking people. They were not white looking native peoples. So he threw it back in their face. Like, what are you complaining about? Okay, the Ukachug, their history is different. They didn't mix with a whole bunch of other people. They stayed very true to themselves and their looks.
Right.
But they got encroached upon where the whites were pushing them, but they were smart. They positioned themselves and the whites kept pushing them back towards the water. So the Ukachuk reservation is all along water because they knew, personally speaking, if they continued holding that land as a part of their reservation, that meant money. Okay, because as we know, white people, anywhere that you build houses and whatnot near water, that's a lot of money. So the Ukachug was smart. They went into businesses and they said, you white people, you want land? Yeah, just continue purchasing it to the front, to the fore. And we'll remain right back here next to the river.
Right.
And so they, like I said, the Shinnecock are recognized by the federal government. The Ukachug are recognized by the New York state government. The Montauks, most of them have died out. There are very few Montauks left. The Methinicock, there are very few. I know one Methinicock for sure. He's still alive, but most of them have died out. There's always been an interaction between the Shinnecock and the Ukachug. They do marry. They cross over and they do marry, if you understand what I mean, at times. So if you look on my YouTube, you'll see me interviewing Ollie, and he is an actual Ukachug,
Right.
but his mother was Shinnecock.
Right.
Wow.
So that's the reason why I really got to him before he died. It is a very fascinating history. So when we look at Mr. Robert Banks Cornelius junior
Mhm.
we're looking at the Southeast. We're looking at Georgia in particular.
Right.
We are looking at the Muskogee Creek tribe, and we are also looking at the Cherokee. Now, a lot of African Americans claim that they are part Cherokee. Well,
Right. Right.
specifically because they come from South Carolina, North Carolina,
Right.
Georgia. The home of the
Right.
Cherokee is really Georgia. Okay.
Got you.
So when his cousin sent me a particular set of paperwork, documentation,
Uh-huh.
and on this documentation were these white people's names. And I'm like, okay, so what has this got to do with the family? All right. But my inner sense, being a historian, I said, hold on. We're looking at white people that settled in Georgia amongst the Native Americans.
Mhm.
Who there can be a connection. And
Yep.
Robert kept saying to me, how could that be a connection? You know, all I'm interested in is Native. I'm not interested in no white people. We don't have no white people in the family. I had to tell him, cut the crap. Okay. I've seen some photos of your people. So let's stop it there, okay? So we went to Georgia. We went to that particular library that has this information about the Lewis Blackburn family.
Right.
I actually found the document inside a written book, okay, by a white historian who studied this very, very deeply. And I said, this family is definitely, this Lewis Blackburn family is a part of the whole show. And that's how I started to develop the genealogy.
So
and as I was going backwards they are, they started his heritage, and it's going to be through the marriage into a Hudson family that's going to continue that heritage. So this is all on Eagle Eye's father's side, okay? And we had to trace everything and everybody, both Hudson, Blackburn, and Banks, through the male DNA, through the male DNA. And I was so happy because these white men were marrying Native American women, having children. You get what I'm saying? And then their children are marrying into the Hudson family. You get what I'm saying? And so you
Hudsons
see,
were the black people?
all centers. The Hudsons are also white.
They're also
Blackburns and Hudsons are white people. They're white people
and
who lived amongst the natives.
Got you.
And the Blackburn factor. Lewis Blackburn married a woman who was full-blooded Cherokee, came from a very important family amongst the Cherokee, the Van family.
Right.
She has a daughter. Her daughter marries a Hudson. Okay.
Wow.
And that particular Hudson, his father has a child outside of the marriage who is a male child and a Hudson, right? So he's connected now. And that's the line that Eagle Eye comes down from, that particular factor. We proved everything simply because one day, out of the clear blue sky, Burrell Vaudrey Hudson, which is Eagle Eye's fourth great grandfather, his last son, somebody who is related to that person, connected to to Eagle Eye through his DNA.
Wow.
And it showed, boom. I said, oh my God, this is it. He said, what do you mean? I said, you're really a Hudson. This last son of Burrell, your DNA is a match. That's what I needed.